Hello, welcome back. This is Histopast Forward, the place where we listen to the echoes of the past together in the silence of the night. Before we begin tonight, I have a small request for you. If there's anything you'd like me to improve in the videos, the rhythm of my voice, my narration style, or anything else, please write it in the comments. Every idea, every suggestion is very valuable to me, because I'm shaping this story with you. Tonight I'm taking you thousands of years back, to a time when the lands were dusty, but everything moved slower. Our story's title: What was life like in Palestine when Jesus was alive? But first, I'm going to ask you one more thing. Please write your city and the current time in the comments. That way, I can feel people from all over the world embarking on this journey at the same time. This makes me very happy every time. Now, dim the lights a little, drape your blanket over your shoulders, and close your eyes, because now our story begins. Chapter 1. Footprints of Shepherds at Dawn.
You wake in the earliest hours of the morning, before the sky has turned blue, as the coolness descends the slopes. The cloak made of goat wool draped over you is still damp with the night's dew. The scent of the earth is heavy at these hours, as the coolness that accumulated overnight rises from the depths of the soil with the first breeze of morning, filling your nostrils. Like every shepherd in Galilee, you must begin your day before the sun rises, because the sheep won't wait for you. Rome's tax won't wait. Life won't wait for you. Your sleeping place is a simple stone shelter. It doesn't even have 4 walls. Just stones piled up to block the wind from the east. The goat hide spread over you is thin, but sufficient. There is no such thing as luxury in this countryside. There is only sufficiency. The word enough is perhaps Galilee's most repeated prayer. Enough that the children eat something today. Enough that the sheep remain healthy. Enough that Roman soldiers don't come this way. The morning song begins not with a rooster's crow, but with the muffled bleating of goats on the mountain slope. The animals rising is the first ceremony of the morning. You rise after them. Shaking your numb legs, you dab a few drops of dew water on your face. You have neither soap nor a mirror. But a shepherd's face, with time, becomes a mirror of nature. The direction of your wrinkles shows the direction of the wind. Your cracked lips indicate the level of moisture. Today begins like an ordinary day, but within the ordinariness of every day, small tensions are hidden. For example, which sheep will give birth next? On which ridge might wolves be roaming? Which Roman tax collector will descend upon these lands with an excuse for taxes? These are unanswered questions, but in the silence of the morning, they walk with you like shadows. You pick up your crook. It is a simpy, lee bent tree branch, but your whole world rests on its tip. With it you guide the sheep, with it you keep the wolves away. You hang the same crook by the door when you return in the evening. This has been done for generations, as you saw your father do, as he saw his father do. In these lands, knowledge passes not through books, but through hands and silence. You know the path of the sheep that have grazed on these same hills for generations, living alongside you. Before the sun has even risen, you gently guide the flock up the slope. With each step, the damp stones of the earth crunch. You have no shoes. Your sandals, made of goat leather, have been repaired countless times. Every stitch is a memory. Every patch tells a story. On the hillside, looking towards the horizon, you notice the sky turning blue. But this is not just light. This is the harbinger of another time. For in Galilee, morning is not merely a time of day, but also a hope for contact with the sacred. According to Jewish belief, morning prayers begin before the sky brightens. For this reason, some shepherds spend these hours in prayer. They raise their hands, murmur passages from the Torah, and thank God for a new day. But for many shepherds like you, these hours are less about praying and more about silently planning how to survive. In a nearby valley, you encounter another shepherd. The greeting is simple, a nod, a brief glance. Conversation is unnecessary because nature has replaced language. Which hill has greener grass? Which water source still flows? These are understood with a look. Speaking only attracts attention, especially if Roman soldiers are patrolling nearby. The Roman presence is felt everywhere, but is not always visible. Sometimes the wind carries the cries of slaves working on road construction, or a distant horn sound from a valley announces that a legion is on the move. Fosu.
Or these sounds are not danger, but part of the order.
Because here, danger is not experienced openly, but like a seepage, it is silent, it is prolonged, and it creates habit. You stop by a rock and let the flock rest. You open your bag. The items inside are familiar. A few barley breads, some olives, and a dried fig. This is a shepherd's breakfast in Palestine, not filling, but enough. The olives are salty. You grimace, but they give you energy. You take a few sips of water from your pitcher. The water comes from the well at the edge of the village, which you filled in the early hours of the morning. Women wait around that well, silent but with watchful eyes. Drawing water from the well is not just a necessity, but a place of socialization. But you are a man. You cannot linger long in an area where women are present. The boundary between men and women is invisible, but as clear as stone. So you don't linger long at the well, but your eyes linger for a brief moment on their faces. The face of the girl you dreamed of marrying one day is still in your mind. She is as balanced and silent as the pitcher she carries. When a part of the flock scatters, you call out, you utter an exclamation. Hey, hey! Your voice spreads down the hill. The sheep recognize this sound because every shepherd guides his flock with his voice. Every sound is a signature. While the Roman Empire rules with coins and castles, you govern your small kingdom with your voice. As noon approaches, the sun shines more directly. The shadows shrink, the earth dries. Your skin is accustomed to this heat, but the sheep are not. You move the flock once more to find a shaded area. The day falls into a rhythm again. Walking, grazing, resting, changing direction. All of life proceeds in this cycle. But within this cycle, there are meaningful silences from time to time. It is in one of those moments that you hear a sound from afar. Is it another shepherd's hymn? Oh, or is this the voice of a man speaking in the valley? In Galilee there are some men. They preach, they stop people. They pretend to say something new, but usually they repeat old stories with different words. Is it one of them, or is this the son of that famous carpenter? You can't quite make out whose voice it is, but the grass waving in the wind seems to carry his words, as if saying, "Blessed are the poor." Perhaps your mind just wants to hear it at that moment. But for you as a shepherd, how much happiness is possible? As the wind changes direction, the voice is heard more clearly, as if the valley walls are echoing it back. Not every word is clear, but the intonation is familiar, not harsh, not hurried, not a sermonless, as if someone is thinking rather than speaking. You cast a brief glance in the direction of the sound, but in the emptiness behind the hills, there are only the shadows of trees and rock formations. Your flock is still slowly grazing. The sound of the sheep chewing their cud continues almost incessantly, like breathing. As the day approaches noon, the sky turns a clearer blue. You follow the shade, for in these lands shade is as much a guide as the sun. You turn your back to the east, shifting westward. This is not just a direction, it is also a way of thinking. The east represents the old traditions, the west represents the unknown, uncertainty, and you decide to walk towards the unknown. Your feet leave tracks among the stones. You don't know if anyone else can see these tracks. But for you, every step is like a small testament that today continues. Because you do not write, your tongue is heavy. You have learned silence. But the paths you walk tell your story. A little further on, a small rocky flat appears before you. There you notice the tracks of another shepherd, a bitten piece of bread, a dragged footprint, semi-dried goat droppy.
Niggs. Perhaps someone was there a few hours ago. Perhaps they are still nearby. But you do not call out.
Because in this countryside, people understand each other through silence. Their presence is known, but they are not touched. You sit down and take out the last piece of bread from your bag. As you bite into it, your gaze fixes on the horizon again. On the surface, nothing has changed, but an internal tension is growing. Because this day, like others, passes silently and ordinarily. And this ordinariness sometimes puts too many thoughts into one's mind. You begin to ask yourself questions. Who am I without these sheep? Or, will one of these hills one day be my grave? Fatigue settles not in your body, but in your mind. If a shepherd is alone, his mind begins to speak. And it is easy to be alone in the lands of Palestine. Even though Rome's presence is visible, their intervention is not always physical. They establish systems, and you live quietly within them. The tax collected each year changes the taste of the bread you eat. But no one says this aloud. Because fear is as natural a resource here as water. Very few people confront Rome directly. The people do not speak, but they know. When Rome's tax is too much, less crop is sown. When a soldier beats a child, no one says anything, but everyone goes out to the fields early the next morning. Resistance is silent, with eyes, with posture, by speaking less. And you feel like a small part of this silent resistance. When a sheep is lost, it is not just an animal. It is also a part that the system has torn from you. As the sun rises higher, a gentle breeze blows towards your chest. As you walk towards the distant valley, your feet pass through a dry riverbed. This is like a path that overflows with water in spring, but dries up in summer. This is another symbol of time. Lives that flowed in the past now wait in dust and thirst. This valley, once a water source for a village, now only piles of stones and cracked mud remain.
You don't know why people abandoned it. Perhaps plague, perhaps Rome, perhaps simply poverty. There you find the remains of a wall. Vines have grown into it. The stones have shifted. At the edge of the wall there is a broken piece of a pitcher. You gently brush the dust from it with your fingers. No mark is visible on it, but its texture carries the weight of time. This pitcher belonged to someone who drank water here years ago. Perhaps it was made when your grandfather was a child. Perhaps a shepherd like you once passed this way. And again, the same moment, the same thought comes to mind. One day I too will be just a trace among the stones. This thought does not frighten you. On the contrary, it gives a kind of peace. Because in these lands, no one can remain for long. Everyone passes, no one stays, but traces remain, just like the footprints you leave as you pass through this valley. As you emerge from the valley, you see a tree in the distance near the horizon. Its branches are wide, its trunk sturdy, its shade is inviting. You walk towards it, your flock follows you, each moves at its own rhythm, but your direction is decisive. This gives you a small but important sense of responsibility. When you reach the tree, you sit down, resting your crook on your knees, your eyes slowly seem to close. This is more the weight of thought than sleep. And at that moment, you recall the voice you heard a while ago. Blessed are the poor. Why did that phrase sound so familiar to you? Perhaps you had heard of that carpenter's son called Jesus before. Perhaps you had seen him from a distance one day when you went to Capernaum. He wasn't shouting about Rome. He wasn't inciting the people. But still there was an unease in his words, because his words didn't shake the outer order, but the inner silence. And you begin to think, can a poor person truly be happy? So me, knee-lacking sheep, with little food, with a bare back, with heavy taxes, if not in this world, then somewhere else. But where is somewhere else? As the shadow lengthens, time also grows heavy. As the sun leans westward, the colour of the Galilean countryside changes. The earth is redder, the grass is paler, and the sky is quieter now, as if the world that spoke all day now slowly wants to be silent. You also guide your flock back to the east, towards the stone shelter where you spent the night. The sheep accompanied you throughout the day. Each one seems to carry a distinct character. Some constantly keep their heads down, others are more alert. But at the end of the day, they all follow the same path, as if even the animals of this countryside, like people, have learned to live in silence. As you walk together, they step on the earth right after where you stepped. Your footprints overlap. A path is drawn, but that path lives for only a few hours. When night comes, it is erased by the wind, and when morning comes, it is redrawn. Life is a bit like this. It constantly loops back, but each time leaves a slightly different trace. Along the way, you ignore the paved roads built by Rome, because those are the roads of soldiers and merchants. Your path is the old goat trails, shaped by the feet of sheep. These paths are not drawn on maps, but are etched into memories, as an old man sitting by a rock told you years ago. The true path is the one you walk again and again. As you walk, you see a small wisp of smoke rising in the distance. You realize someone has lit a fire. Perhaps another shepherd or a nomadic family, someone else like you, must also be preparing for the night. At that moment, you realize you are not alone. Even though you live without words throughout the day, there are dozens of people in these lands who carry the same burdens as you, perhaps of different ages, from different villages, but asking the same questions, walking in the same silence. By the time you reach Y, our stone shelter, the sky has turned purple. The sun appears as a final line behind the hills. You slowly gather the sheep. There's no need to count. A glance tells you immediately if any are missing. If you don't see one, you instinctively stand up and call out towards the mountain. But today the flock is complete. There are no losses. And even this small victory warms your heart, because completing each day without losing anything is an accomplishment in itself in these lands. You gather a few dry branches to light a fire. You arrange them near the hearth, creating a small flame among the stones. As the flame grows, the light reflecting on your face reveals the day's fatigue. The cracks in your hands become pronounced. The dirt under your nails
no longer comes out. Because this is not just dirt, it is life itself. The definition of cleanliness is different here. Dirt is not only on your body, sometimes it is in your thoughts. And you sit before the fire with those thoughts you carried all day. After drinking the last drops of water from your pitcher, you place your crook on the ground. You lean next to it and eat the last piece of dry bread. Not to satisfy your stomach, but your mind, because the emptiness of the stomach is temporary. But the emptiness of the human mind is deeper. The first stars appear in the sky. This is the harbinger of a new time. As you lie down in the silence of the night, you rest your head on a stone. As your chest rises and falls, you suddenly recall the voice you heard that morning. Blessed are the poor. This sentence did not leave you all day. A curiosity mixed with fatigue enveloped you. Who said this? Why did he say it? And more importantly, could it really be true? You have known poverty since your childhood. You are used to it. You have never known what life without it is like, but are being accustomed and being happy the same. I think, as you look at the sky, the stars slowly multiply. Those are the same stars that shepherds looked at 1,000 years ago, in the same place, in the same order, in the same silence. Perhaps the same question was going through their minds. Will this poverty ever have meaning one day? When you first heard the name Jesus, they said he was a carpenter's son, then a teacher, a healer, then a threat. But for you, he is still just a voice from the valley, carried by the wind, touching your face. Perhaps one day you will hear him more closely. Perhaps one day you will see his face, but not today. Today is just a time to rest in the starlight falling on the stone. And as you drift off to sleep, that question returns to your mind. Is poverty merely a lack, or is it where the search for meaning begins? Before the sun has even risen, the sound of donkeys laden with stones blends into the narrow streets of Jerusalem. The thick stone blocks, as they pass over the cobblestone streets, gently break the city's sleep with their sound. As a stone mason, you don't wake to this sound because you are already awake. In Jerusalem, a laborer's sleep is regulated not by the morning but by taxes. And that morning, dozens of masons like you, along with their apprentices, silently prepare to lift the first stone of the day. What you call home is a mud brick structure on the side of a slope overlooking the city, with old baskets hanging from its roof, barely letting in daylight. It is cool at night, damp in the mornings. Yet, as a stonemason, your house is sturdier than many others in the street. This is not a privilege. On the contrary, it is a necessity of the trade. One who knows the language of walls builds his own wall with more care. You lean against the wall as you tie the laces of your sandals. The stones of the wall seem to have taken the shape of your palm over time. This feeling of familiarity is one of the ways not to feel alone in the city. For Jerusalem, though a holy center, is a complex and silent struggle for those who live within it. In the eyes of outsiders, there is the temple, worship, and miracles. But for you, Jerusalem is stone, dust, and Rome. When you step out into the street, the first thing you encounter is not the morning market, nor is it the temple. It is Rome's tax collectors. They stand at the street corner. In their wooden ledgers are names, debts, and numbers. Everyone pretends to ignore them, but no one can pass without meeting their gaze. You too pass with your head bowed. In your hand is a small sled prepared for transport. Today you will help build a new wall, again for Rome, again for an officer's villa. There is a pang within you, because as you lay those stones, you recall the walls that have fallen in your own neighborhood. There are no materials to rebuild those walls, but when Rome demands, stones flow even downhill. This double standard leaves a silent anger in the hearts of many masons like you, but this anger is not voiced. In Jerusalem, anger accumulates silently like stone. When you arrive at the worksite, the other masons are already lined up, their hammers ready. Greetings are brief, gazes distant, because in this work, time is more valuable than talk. One of the masons simply says, "It's going to get hot early today." This is the only comment of the day. Today is not the day of the weather, but of the stone. As you lift the first stone, your hammer settles into your palm. This hammer has been with you for years. Its wood has grown smooth, its iron a little thinner, but its sound is still strong. When the first blow lands on the stone's surface, the sound echoes through the city. At that moment, the day begins in Jerusalem. The place where you work is near the wealthy district on the west side of Jerusalem. The houses here are sur, rounded by high walls. The windows are small, because eyes looking in from outside are not wanted, but stone masons enter
because their presence is necessary, yet invisible. Neither the Roman officer speaks to you, nor does the lady of the house say a word to you. You carry stones, they pray. You build walls, they seek shade. But sometimes a child's voice comes from a crack in a window. This is the only breath left within Jerusalem. A child's laughter can even lighten the dust of the stone. But it is short-lived, because silence in this city is necessary not only for worship, but also for survival. You work until noon. As the sun slowly hits your face over the walls, your sweat drips onto the stone. As each stone is placed upon the last, you rise a layer between past and future. You think, how many years will this wall stand here? Perhaps 50 years, perhaps a century. But your name will not be known. Your sweat, your breath, your silence will be in that wall, but not your name. This too is the reality of being a stone mason in Jerusalem. Your labor remains, but you are not remembered. And again you think, the names of the masons who built the temple walls are also unknown. Perhaps your great-grandfather was one of the men who placed those gigantic stones. Perhaps his hands also left their mark in this city, but now there are only stones, silent, cold, fixed. And you are the only living thing moving among them. At lunchtime you seek some shade, you kneel in a small courtyard, you open your bag and take out dry bread, a few olives and some salty fish. The water is warm and stale, but you cannot go without drinking. Your apprentice sits silently beside you. His hands are still not accustomed to holding stone. There are small wounds on the sides of his fingers, like your first days. Looking at him, you remember how time passed. Once you too were an apprentice. Not just stone, but patience too is learned through carrying. And at that moment in the shade, you ask yourself this question.
Are stone walls more permanent, or the memories of silent people? Returning after the break, walking on the stones feels a little heavier. The midday heat has scorched Jerusalem's stones. This heat, burning the soles of your feet, reminds you once again how not only the sun's, but also life's burden permeates your body. Your apprentice lags a few steps behind. He learns slower. But you know that in this city it is continuity, not speed, that wins. Those who carry stones always walk in front, because the city is first built by their hands, but none of them carves their name into the walls they leave behind. This is a tradition, silent mastery, labor that is visible but forgotten. Today's work is for a special villa. A merchant from Rome is having a new summer house built in Jerusalem. According to the master, mosaics will be laid in the garden, columns erected, even a fountain pool. As you imagine all this, you think, I will be forbidden to sit in this house, but I am building its walls. This contradiction doesn't surprise you. In Jerusalem, every stone serves another. Every effort is for the comfort of another hand. The sounds of your hammer rise again. With each strike on the stone's surface, your thoughts scatter, because sometimes simply working is the best way not to think. Your hand is accustomed. You know where to place the stone, even without looking. The rhythm itself is a meditation, just like the prayers in the temple. Repetitive, regular, and always with the same tone of voice. But the interesting thing is this: the temple rises just a few streets away from you. Jerusalem's holy center, a magnificent structure built with white stones, with large courtyards where hundreds of people pray every day. And you, as a stonemason, get a little closer to those walls every day. But you cannot enter, because you are not of the Levites, you are not noble, you
are not clergy, you are just a laborer.
When the sound of the shofar is heard from the temple courtyard, your hands pause for a moment. The shofar is the sound of the holy call. It announces that something has begun or ended. Perhaps a ritual has started. Perhaps someone is offering a sacrifice to atone for their sins. Or perhaps preparations are being made before the Sabbath. But for you, this sound is just another rhythm of Jerusalem, because you have neither time for ritual nor enough animals to offer a sacrifice. A soldier passes a few steps away, short tunic, bronze helmet, a spear in his hand. He is like a reminder of Rome, a shadow on every street. They never speak, they just look. But the weight of that gaze has been on your shoulders for years, because this city no longer belongs only to the Jews. The Romans are here. They brought their own gods. They imposed their own laws. And you, as a stonemason among people alienated in their own city, continued on your way. As evening approaches, the shadows lengthen. Working is a little easier at these hours when the heat subsides, but the body is already tired. Hands tremble, knees bend. The wounds on your apprentice's hands have opened, but he does not complain, because childhood does not last long in Jerusalem. Life is joined at a young age. The weight of the stone shapes a person's bones. Towards the end of the workday, a woman passes down the street, a head covering, a pitcher in her hand. Perhaps she is coming from the temple, perhaps from the market, but there is a kind of urgency in her walk, as if she is fleeing something or trying to catch up with someone. Women's faces are rarely seen in Jerusalem. Their heads are always bowed, their gazes always narrow. But for that brief moment, your eyes meet. And for a moment you remember the existence of another person in this city who feels like you. The weariness in their eyes is the same, and at the same time, a resistance. Your eyes say, I am here too. The hammer strikes the stone for the last time. The master declares the work finished. The stones are in place. The wall has risen another layer. But the walls within you, they remain. Still silent. Still strong. You gather your tools and leave the street. As the city is bathed in the orange light of evening, the narrow roads have become a little calmer. Jerusalem works during the day. It retreats into itself in the evening. There are no street lights as you return home, but every stone knows the night. Every projection guides your foot. This city is familiar even in the dark. On the way, you hear a small child reciting a prayer. His voice is high-pitched but determined. Perhaps his father is preparing him for the Sabbath. Perhaps that child will one day read in the temple. Perhaps he will become a rabbi, but he will not be your son. Your son will carry stones just like you. Because in this city, people do not cross class boundaries. Only stones change places. When you arrive home, night has fallen. You lean over the sleeping children, covering them and checking the water pitcher without seeing your wife. Your wife says nothing. She just washes her hands. Weariness is shared in silence in this house. Your eyes meet. That moment is enough, because the same thought is shared without words. A wall was built today, too. But the house is still small, and the city is still large. And you think, no matter how many stone walls a person builds, can they stand without building walls in their own life? With the first silence spreading over the city, Jerusalem gradually empties all the day's noise. Rome's chariots have left the roads, the cries of merchants have ceased, the crowd in the temple courtyard has dispersed. Stonemasons have retreated to their homes, small shops have pulled down their shutters one by one.
But the walls still stand, and these walls continue to speak, even when everything else is silent.
You too have returned home. The stone walls you built all day are still lined up in your mind. But now, your hands are empty, your feet tired, your eyes wander in the flickering light of a dim oil lamp. Your wife has placed the last remaining water in a small clay pitcher by the hearth. You meet eyes in a wordless gesture. After all these years, words are no longer needed. The language of shared poverty is silence. In the small room, the children are asleep. The youngest has curled up, head in arms. The other's feet hang out from under the blanket. You gently cover them. Your stone-carrying hands now feel delicate. Because night in Jerusalem is not just for resting, it is for thinking. You slowly step outside. You sit on the stone steps in front of your house. The coolness of the night touches your skin, but it doesn't make you shiver. You are used to it. A stonemason in Jerusalem loves the night most. Because the city, like stone, only softens at night. During the day it is hard, angular, noisy. But when night falls, the memories embedded in the stones become more audible. In the distance, a faint sound of prayer comes from the temple, perhaps a night vigil of a group of Levites, or perhaps just someone murmuring a passage from the Torah in the shadow of the wall. In this city, it is hard to know where a sound comes from, because Jerusalem is a place that lives with echoes. Every street brings back the sound of another time, and as you walk these stone streets, you are caught between the traces of the past and the burden of the present. Your fingers are still covered with stone dust. All day you gripped the handle of your hammer dozens of times. You placed dozens of stones, each for a different wall, for a different house, but none of them are yours. And this thought gnaws at your mind most at night, building stronger walls for someone else's house than for your own, raising structures that provide coolness in someone else's shade, while the place your own children lay their heads grows old. But you do not object. This is the fate of a stonemason in Jerusalem. Here, hands work, mouths are silent. Because those who speak too much either lose their voice or their job. Rome has taught this. Working silently is as valuable as loyalty. You look at the city. The moon illuminates the temple walls, as if every crack on the stones becomes more distinct in the moonlight. In Jerusalem, daylight shows holiness. Nighttime light shows truth. The moon looks beyond the walls. It magnifies the shadows. Details you didn't see while building the wall now appear. And these details initiate another story in your mind. Years ago, when you were still an apprentice, your master told you, "Read the face of the stone. Every stone has a hidden voice within it. If you look closely, it will tell you where it wants to sit." At that time, you didn't understand these words. The stone always seemed silent to you. But now, as years pass, you realize that every stone truly has a character of its own. Some sit easily, some crack, break. Some are soft, and some, no matter how hard you try, won't settle into place. Just like people. Just like the city. Jerusalem is also a stone, actually, holy on the outside, full of cracks within. Everyone looks at it with admiration, but living inside it is something entirely different. While pilgrims from outside walk through the streets praying, you have repaired the stones they tread upon. The walls they bow their heads to in greeting have been raised by your hands. But your name is unknown. Because this city writes the name of the worshipper, not the laborer, on its walls. Yet your worship is also with stones. Every day you begin in the early morning, you continue in the midday heat, and only finish at the evening. Call to prayer. Every hammer blow echoes like a prayer, but no one sees this, because eyes always look upward, to the top of the temple, not to where you stand. Will there ever be a time when the names of stonemasons are written in the temple? Or will anonymous traces always be our lot? Suddenly a cat approaches your feet. It sidles up to you with soft, silent steps. It rubs its tail against your legs. You don't know it, but it obviously lives on this street. Perhaps it sees you carrying stones every day. Perhaps, like you, its place is not precisely defined. Even if it has a name, no one knows it, but here, among the stones, it comes to the same spot every night, and it too leaves a trace in the city. As the cat's eyes gleam, you look again at the stones beneath your feet. Some are cracked, some have shifted. The coolness of the night makes the stones seem looser, as if the city is tight only during the day. It loosens at night. And all the sins, dreams, and fears that have passed through those cracks slowly seep out. You too notice your own cracks, dreams you haven't spoken of for years. Questions whose names you see you've even forgotten. At that moment, you recall that foreign voice you heard years ago. He was a Roman stone merchant. Watching you, he had said, "Stone is not just shelter. Stone is time. The one who places it directs time itself." You didn't understand then. Now, thinking about it, you realize that every piece of stone you placed represented a day. When you didn't work for a day, a stone was missing. When a stone was missing, a wall was incomplete. And when a wall was incomplete, it wasn't a home. This is your life too, like a house built with missing stones, but still standing. Finally, as the night deepens, you go inside. The children are still asleep. Your wife looks at you with tired eyes. You lean by the pillow and pray. This prayer is silent but heard, because in Jerusalem some prayers come only from the heart. Words are not needed. As you lay,
our head on the stone pillow, the sound of stones is still in your mind. The hammer, the chisel, the laying, the arrangement. But there is another sound now, your own inner voice, that small whisper you suppressed all day, and this voice slowly asks you this question. Have you ever built a wall for yourself? Before the first light of day reaches the eastern hills, a man sits in the shadow of the stone steps leading up to Jerusalem's holy center. His back is bent, his hands are hidden within his robe. On his knees rests a basket long past its prime. At the bottom of the basket are a few dried figs and a little barley meal. He hopes for a few copper coins during the day, perhaps a piece of bread in exchange for these, all from today. But in these early hours of the morning, he only waits for silence. Silence is his time. He is outside the temple, always outside. He can never enter. His eyes are fixed on the columns at the entrance to the sacred courtyard. The white stones after the night's dew appear cool and smooth. The temple itself stands high, but even on those steps it takes courage to stand still. For this is a place established not only for worship, but also for observation, judgment, and separation. The man doesn't speak much, and if he did, no one would listen, because he is now a shadow, close to the temple gate, but always on its threshold. And in this city, shadows have no names. Yet years ago, this man too was an ordinary artisan. He worked with leather. He taught small children how to sew sandals. But one day, a fire that broke out in his workshop burned not his goods, but his name. He fell into debt. His family scattered. His place is now outside the gate. The Jerusalem temple is magnificent. Its courtyard is wide, its columns tall. Every morning the Levites make the morning call with silver shofars. Men direct their prayers towards the Qibla.
Women watch from separate sections. Not everyone has the right to enter the temple. Classes are clear. Who can enter, on which step one can stand, is even written. That's why those like the man wait on the sidelines, because the boundary is drawn not by holiness, but by status. A child approaches the man, worn rags on his feet, a stone bowl in his hand. He is carrying water. His mother is one of the widows who clean around the temple. Only specific areas are open to women, but some wipe the stones outside the courtyard for alms. This child, while helping his mother, sometimes greets the old man. This morning is the same. The man bows his head to the child, does not raise his hand, but looks at him as if praying with his eyes, without uttering a single word, because such relationships are established not with words, but with glances. As the day progresses, the area around the temple comes alive. Wealthy merchants arrive in their ostentatious clothes. They wear robes of expensive fabrics, with neatly tied head coverings. They wait to sacrifice the animals they have brought. There is an attendant for each one. The temple is systematic. Sacrifice, prayer, purification, all proceed according to specific rules. But just outside this entire system, the man is still there, in the same position on the stone where he sits. A young man approaches him. He wears ordinary clothes, but his eyes wander attentively, as if he wants to learn something not from the temple's ritual, but from its silence. He is not one of the flamboyant religious figures inside. But as he gestures with his hands, he seems to be searching for meaning. The man notices him coming and going. He had seen him a few days ago too. He didn't draw much attention in the crowd, but he was whispering something. He wasn't touching people, not shouting, but when he fixed his gaze, people stopped. Perhaps one of the preachers. perhaps just a curious person. But in this city, even those who speak silently are underserved. Ilance. The man follows this young man with his eyes. His walk is like water rubbing against the side of a wall, not belonging anywhere but leaving a trace as it passes. One of the temple guards glances at him. He frowns slightly. This means an unwanted presence here. But the young man turns and continues to walk slowly. The man doesn't know his name, but a sentence goes through his mind. He looks like someone who knows how to listen to this silence. The outside of the temple is in fact much more meaningful than the inside, because those inside are busy with the system. Those outside are busy with real questions. Whose prayer is accepted? Whose sacrifice is valid? And what about those who can offer nothing? Do they have no connection with God? The man asks these questions over and over every day. But he cannot voice any of them aloud, because here rules speak, not questions. Towards noon, the sun rises directly overhead. The stone walls of the temple grow warm. The shadow shrinks. The man pulls his hands further into his robe. His body trembles. His old bones carry not the cold of the stone, but the weight of the system. Because here one must endure not only the heat, but also being ignored. A woman approaches the outer wall of the temple, a head covering, a small purse in her hand. Inside are 2 copper coins. He recognizes her. She comes every day at the same time. She doesn't go inside, she just waits outside. Then she puts those 2 coins into the offering box and leaves without saying anything. The man doesn't know her name, but he shares a similar place with her. Both stand at the boundary of the sacred, but they do not meet the sacred with their eyes. After the woman leaves, the man thinks, is true worship entering and praying, or waiting silently outside? No one in this city asks this question aloud, but everyone feels it in some way. Tawatat. It's the end of the day, shadows lengthen again. The hymns in the temple slowly cease. The sounds of sacrificial animals are no longer heard. Merchants have withdrawn. Religious leaders have returned to their rooms. But that old man still sits at the edge of the stone steps. A few dried figs are still in his basket. Not enough alms for the day's food have been collected, but this is a usual ending for him. He fixes his eyes on the gate again. As the heavy iron gates of the temple slowly close, the lights inside dim. But the man has never entered. Yet he has been there for years. He knows every stone by heart. He recognizes every crack in the wall. But he is still outside. When the first coolness of the night arrives, the man slowly rises from his place. He takes his basket onto his lap. With one hand he feels for his staff. It takes time for him to stand up. His body does not obey, but he is accustomed to it. Because here, not only walls, but also people are shaped by patience. He turns his back and enters the narrow street. No one looks at him as he leaves. He looks at no one either. Because in this city, some people merely pass through. They leave no trace. But by being silently present at the outer wall of the temple every day, he has left a trace. And you think, does someone who always remains outside a city actually see more than those who are inside? Carrying the coolness of the night on your back, when you set out early in the morning, the stone streets are still asleep. Night in Jerusalem is never entirely dark, but every street awakens to a different morning. In some, merchants arrange their goods. In others, the footsteps of men going to morning prayer echo. Yours, as always, is towards a corner, the boundary of the temple. You walk slower than the day before. Your ankles feel as if they haven't rested all night. You probe the cracks in the stones with the tip of your staff. Every stone is a stone from another time. Every crack, the troa, ace of another life. You think about how many people, how many prayers, how many disappointments have walked this path you've taken every morning for years. And then you remember once more, your place is not at the very gate of the temple. It is at the side of the wall, its shadow. You sit on the same stone again, facing the southern entrance of the temple, 2 stones beyond the steps. Your stone, its surface polished from sitting on it, its edges worn. You sit there every day, but never with the same feeling, because the city is the same, but you change. And today, your body is a little more silent, your mind a little more tired. The crowd arrives early this morning. Perhaps a feast is approaching, perhaps a day of ritual. More people walk towards the temple, some carrying small birds, some with a purse of gold, women holding their children's hands. All flow towards that stone gate with a certain intention, in a certain order. No one step is wasted here. Everyone's coming is to ask for something, for forgiveness, for healing, for hope. But you no longer have the right to ask for anything. You only watch. This morning, you see a familiar face, that woman. The woman who comes every day with her small purse, who prays outside rather than inside. She has come again. She again has 2 coins, and again she speaks not a word. Her eyes are lowered, her steps measured. When she reaches the temple gate, she does not raise her head. She only pauses for a moment. She takes out the coins in her palms. She places them by an offering box. Then she turns back. But this morning is different. As she leaves, her eyes meet yours, a very brief moment. But for you, it feels as long as an hour. Because here, meeting eyes is an intention. Perhaps a question, perhaps just an effort to make one's existence felt. That woman, like you, is one of those who live on the boundary, not within the wall, but at its edge. After the woman moves away, the crowd grows again. Hymns rise from the temple. Silver shofars echo. The scent of incense mingles in the air. Everything is orderly and sacred. But this ostentatious structure draws an invisible but felt wall between it and the stone you sit on. Because the crowd that comes here sees only those inside. They do not see those sitting outside. A child falls as he passes in front of you. His hand scrapes, he cries for a moment. His mother picks up the child and quickly moves away. They don't look at you, but you remember the spot where the child fell. Perhaps it is one of the stones you laid. Perhaps years ago you were one of the men who carried stones for the foundation of this temple. But now the stone you sit on is not a memory of your past, but merely the shadow of today. Towards noon, the sun rises high. The stones grow hot. Your robe is soaked with sweat. The shadow shrinks. You close your eyes, not to rest, but not to hear, because even the hymns coming from inside have now turned into echoes. For you, what is sacred is not these stones, it is patience. Coming every day and sitting in the same place, being there when no one sees you. Isn't this also a kind of worship? Someone young approaches you. The same person from yesterday, the man who walks silently, unnoticed in the crowd. He passes in front of you again. He says nothing, but he greets you with his eyes. This greeting is silent but powerful, because for someone like you, even being remembered is a great gift. You don't know his name, but you think, this man also stands on the boundary. Perhaps his place is not inside either. Perhaps he too feels that those outside are closer to God, because those inside follow the order, but those outside live without praying. They pray while living. In the afternoon, silence grows again. The crowd disperses. The temple lightens. The stidot. Ones return to their own warmth. The shadows of the columns fall to the ground. You too retreat into the shade. There are still a few dried figs in your basket, but your stomach is not hungry. Because in this city, hunger is not just about the stomach. The hunger for recognition is greater. The desire for approval, to be seen, to be heard. These are heavier, and every day you sit on that stone with these feelings, without telling anyone, without showing anyone. And you think again, what does it mean to be close to God in a temple, to be inside the wall, or to live outside but patiently, silently, observing? As you close your eyes, the cold surface of the stone touches your back, and once again you feel like a part of that stone. You are no longer just an observer, but a bearer of memory, because everyone passes through this city, but you are among those who remain. And in that silence a question echoes. Is someone outside the temple truly outside? As the day's last light gently caresses the temple columns, the silence settling over Jerusalem takes on a different tone. Not only the city, but time itself has slowed. And when time slows, the unnoticed become more visible. Those sitting at the foot of the walls, those waiting in the shade, those who cannot enter, all find their place within this slowness. You are on the same stone again, the same robe, the same basket, the same gaze, but today there is a difference, a stirring within you. Perhaps the woman who met your eyes this morning, perhaps the young man's silent greeting, or perhaps just an inner ripple brought on by weariness. Its cause is unclear, but it is felt. For a while, you fix your eyes on the wall, on the stones of the temple's exterior. They too are observers like you. They do not hear what happens inside, but they bear its weight. And you think, can a wall, no matter how strong, stand, and only with the patience of those who watch from outside? The crowd has dispersed. The temple gates slowly close. The scent of incense gradually withdraws from the air. The sky begins to darken. But you do not rise, because you are still there. And being there is now your worship. You're coming every morning, you're leaning your shoulder against the coldness of the stone before leaving every evening. All of these are the shapeless forms of prayers. Suddenly, the child appears again. The child who helped his mother this morning. This time he holds a piece of dry bread. He approaches, looks into your eyes. He doesn't speak, but he slowly places what he holds into your basket. It is a tiny gesture, but for you it is like a greeting that lightens the weight of the entire day. You smile at the child. You do not pat his head with your hand. You simply bow your head. Because in Jerusalem, words lose their meaning when used too much. Communication is established with glances, posture, silence. And the child knows this. He walks away silently. In your basket there are now a few figs and a piece of dry bread. But what truly satisfies is the way that piece was given, because true charity is not just giving food. It is accepting one's presence. And that child saw you. Being seen in this city is as valuable as gold. As the moon rises, your body grows a little heavier, but the thoughts within you lighten. You look at the temple wall once more. Perhaps those inside prayed hundreds of times today. Perhaps hundreds of sacrifices were offered. But you, by sitting silently, feel closer to God. Your inability to pass beyond those walls does not distance you from the sacred. Perhaps being on the other side of the wall brings not proximity, but obligation. Whereas here, outside, you are free. No one dictates what you should say. Your prayer is to sit on the stone all day, to observe, to carry the memory of those who are forgotten. A sound reaches your ear, a whisper from someone praying at another, distant wall. You cannot distinguish the words, but the intonation is familiar. Low, calm, heartfelt. Perhaps a mother, perhaps someone like you, perhaps not even someone inside. But she is whispering with the hope of being heard as she prays, and that is when you realize the prayers rising not from within the temple, but from around it, are deeper. Because those inside often perform a duty, but those outside are bound by silence. They cannot quite say what they want, but they carry what they need in their hearts. You carry this too. Every day, with every sitting, with every waiting, the sky darkens completely. The stone is now cold. You take your staff in hand, slowly rise to your feet. Your back is hunched, but your gait is calm. You do not look back, because that is the place you come to every day anyway. You know you will come again tomorrow. The stone will be waiting for you. You turn into a narrow street. The city is silent. Cats are curled up on the stones. A faint sound of a saz comes from somewhere. Perhaps an old person sitting in front of a shop is playing it, but even that music comes from far away, like a dream. When you return home, darkness greets you. A small oil lamp burns. You place your basket aside, you rub your hands, then curl up in your sleeping place. There is no blanket, but the walls left by the stonemasons protect you from the wind. As you close your eyes, you think of everyone you saw that day, that woman, that child, that silent man, all outside the wall, but all closer to prayer. And that is your final thought. Does God perhaps hear those who whisper the most? Morning arrives with the wind that sweeps down the slope, passing between the stone houses of the village. The sun has not yet risen, but the footsteps of women can already be heard on the stone streets. Some barefoot, some in sandals, pitchers in hand, head coverings all.
And their heads. The path to the well is familiar, but it must be walked every morning.
For this path leads not only to water, but also to solidarity, patience, and silence. You are one of those women, perhaps a mother's daughter, perhaps a widow, perhaps a wife. But whatever identity you carry, everyone is equal on the path to the well. Hidden from the eyes of men, within a life that unfolds behind walls, the first task of the morning is always water. For water is not just for drinking, but for living, for cleaning, for kneading, for cooking, for telling stories. The path to the well is steep. The stone steps have stood the same way for years. Some stones are broken, some covered in moss. You know by heart where your feet might slip, where they will find purchase. This morning, as always, you cradle your pitcher, light when empty, but full of expectations, because when you return, It will be heavier and will carry the peace of having completed the first task of the day. Along the way, a few more women appear. Greetings are silent, bows of the head, glances of recognition. Everyone goes to the same purpose, but no one speaks, because these hours are sacred. The silence before reaching the well is almost an inner preparation. This slowness which precedes all the day's hustle is a time for women to breathe. The well is outside the village, where the olive trees begin. It has stood in the same place for centuries. Every generation has drawn water from it. Every generation has left another prayer within it as they lowered the bucket. Wishes made before touching the bottom of the water, prayers no one hears. The well itself is a kind of memory. Every drop of water within it has been carried by a woman's hand from the past. When you arrive, you join the queue. 2 women in front of you, 3 behind. The area around the well is stone paved. In the middle, a round opening. The rope is worn with time, but still sturdy. The bucket is made of wood. The sound of water still comes from deep within. When the first bucket descends, the sound of the wood hitting the water echoes. It is a kind of morning bell, like the awakening of the well. One of the women fills her pitcher. Her hands tremble slightly with the morning chill, but her movements are determined, because this task has been repeated for years. Every movement is memorized, the way she holds the rope of the bucket, the way she tilts the pitcher's mouth to prevent water from spilling, the angle she bends to avoid wetting her clothes. All are subtleties taught by years. When it's your turn, you lower the bucket. As the rope rubs against your hands, the marks of calluses on your palms become distinct. The slap sound from the bucket reaching the water is heard. That moment is the clearest sound of the morning. As you pull it up, the weight of the bucket increases. But it is not the strength in your arm, but the patience in your mind that pulls that load. Because this is not just water, it is the very essence of the children waiting for you at home, of the morning dough, of your husband's ablutions, of the old person's drink. As you fill your pitcher, a drop overflows. It falls onto your foot. The coolness gives a momentary shiver, but it is fleeting. Then you raise your head and look around the well. Other women are waiting to fill their pitchers. Some whisper to each other, but the voices are not loud because everyone here knows. The morning silence at the well is not broken. A woman approaches you, not a stranger, but not close either. Just a familiar face, about your age. There are signs of sleeplessness in her eyes, but her face is resolute. She bows her head slightly and asks you a question. "Can I take a little extra water today? The neighbor woman is ill. I'm doing her work too." No words are needed to answer this question. You nod your head, pull your pitcher slightly to the side. The woman takes out a second pitcher. Her hands tremble as she fills it with water. You help her. Both of you hold the bucket at the same time. This moment is small, invisible, but important. Because in this city, mutual aid is experienced not with grand sentences, but with brief gestures. The woman whispers, looking at you. "Yesterday, someone came to the village. He was from around the temple. He was speaking quietly. He looked at people and said, 'You are blessed,' even though he knew they were poor. This sentence hangs in the air. You don't know how to answer. Because is it really so? Is this happiness? Drawing water from the well every morning, kneading dough with flour not enough to feed the children, and then drawing water again, an endless cycle. But at the same time, life itself. The woman leaves. She puts her pitcher on her head and walks away. You follow her footsteps. There is a resilience in her posture, because being a woman in these lands is much more than carrying water. It is a silent struggle, a constant balance, an invisible resistance. You too put your pitcher on your head. You tighten your head, covering a little more. You measure your steps as you climb the stone path again, because the pitcher is heavy. But more than that, your eyes watch the surroundings. If a stone has shifted, you are careful as you pass it, because falling causes damage not only to the ground, but to the entire rhythm of the morning. When you reach the village, the streets are still silent. Smoke has begun to rise from some houses. The morning hearth has been lit, the clay oven heated, flour has begun to meet water. Water is now once again at the center of life. And as you place this simple but sacred burden you brought from the well at your doorstep, you think to yourself, such an ordinary thing, a pitcher of water. Could it truly be a prayer? As you walk through the stone street, carrying the water pitcher on your head, the morning chill has slowly receded. The sun has not yet fully risen, but the eastern hills have begun to glow orange. Your steps are balanced and measured. This walk is not just a physical movement. It is a passage repeated for years, memorized every morning. Bringing water here is not just a chore, it is a passage, a thin interval between the mornings of being a woman and the hurried moments of noon. When you arrive at your house door, the pitcher on your head is still securely balanced. You slowly lower the pitcher to the ground. You bring your hands to your head, stretch your neck, and arch your back. The pitcher is heavy, yes, but heavier still is the day that is about to begin. You go to the hearth. The clay oven is still cold, but the first smoke of the morning must rise from your hands. You take some water from the pitcher. First, you use it to rinse a pot in a small bowl. Then you wash your hands and face. When the coolness of the water touches your skin, the morning's burden lightens a little. But this is a temporary relief. The children are about to wake up. The little one murmurs in sleep. The other curls deeper under the blanket. You cover them and quickly return to the kitchen. The flour was measured last night. Now it must be combined with water. As you pour water into the kneading bowl, the word you heard at the well this morning comes to mind. Blessed are the poor. You cannot help but think. Your arms grow tired as you knead, but you don't stop, because this movement is not just for food, it is like kneading time itself. The dough taking shape in your hands is not just bread, it is your children's day, your husband's unspoken sentence, the help the elderly neighbor is waiting for. Someone calls from the door, the neighbor woman, a relative of the sick one. She was mentioned at the well yesterday. Help is needed today. Without stopping what you're doing, you head to the door. The way. Man asks for some water, she asks with her body language. Because talking sometimes takes up too much space. You slowly fill a pitcher with water. You hand it to the woman. She simply bows her head. She doesn't thank you, because in this village, thanks flows naturally, like water. It doesn't need to be said. When you return inside, the children are awake. Water is needed again, to wash their hands, to rinse their mouths, sometimes just to cool down. The water pitcher gradually lightens, but the movements that fill the house multiply. Water is not just an object in the house. Water directs. Who wakes up when laundry is washed, when the clay oven is lit? Water decides everything. The clay oven burns. Slowly the scent of flour rises. Silence is heavy around the tandoor. The children sit on the side. The morning's fatigue has not yet fully passed. A few bird sounds are heard from outside. Shadows have begun to shorten. You look out the door. towards the path to the well. A few women are still there, the latecomers, or those carrying someone else's burden. Each is busy with her own pitcher, but none is alone, because in this land, women are not alone, they are left alone. And then they come together again in shared silence. The water in the house is almost gone, but bringing another pitcher of water might not be possible today. As the sun approaches noon, the path to the well becomes hotter, more tiring, but despite this you think, should I take another pitcher? This thought is not only about your own need, but about the possibility of others. Perhaps the neighbour's laundry hasn't been washed. Perhaps the old woman is waiting for water. Perhaps the children will ask for water again. Perhaps someone without water will knock on your door. You caress the top of the pitcher. The coolness of the water is gone, but it still carries meaning. The water you drew from the well this morning is now managing the rhythm of the entire house. This pitcher set out with you this morning, and now it sits at the center of the house with you. And a single question arises in your mind. Is it possible for such simple water to carry so much? And then you think, if it weren't for you, who would carry the water? As the midday sun fills every empty space in the house, the water you carried this morning is now a few bowls less. But what has diminished is not just quantity, it is time. Because the emptying of each bucket announces that the day has progressed a little further. And you need neither a clock nor a shadow to measure this. The change in the water level is time itself. You have put the dough in the clay oven and baked the first bread. The children play with crumbs in a corner. Your husband has not yet returned. Perhaps he went to the olive grove. Perhaps he is delayed because of the path where Roman soldiers pass. Perhaps a new tax announcement has been made. Information about these does not come, but women feel it. In every footstep from the door, in every echo on the stone floor, something is red. The neighbour's child leans against the door. He holds out a small bowl. "My mother ran out of washing water," he says. One word, that's all. But every drop that overflows as you pour water from the pitcher mingles with the mother's absence, the dryness of the laundry, and the lather of the soap. This child, perhaps, does not yet know the value of water, but you know that this water you draw from the well every morning also turns the day for others. Your hands are still wet as you hand over the bowl. You cannot dry them because the movement does not stop. The morning silence gives way to the afternoon silence. In that silence, water boils on the hearth, the last of the laundry is wrung out, a broken pitcher is mended. No one asks, "What did you do today?" because the answer is everywhere. The ash under your nails, your feet embedded in the earth, the flour dust on your head covering. Voices of other women come from outside, not loud but clear. Perhaps new news has arrived. Perhaps someone has given birth. Perhaps someone from another village has come. In this village, sound does not carry information. It gives direction. It tells which street to go down, which house to approach. And you pause for a moment. You listen intently. Because in these voices there might be something concerning your family, your neighbor, the old woman waiting in silence. But the voices fade away. You return to your house. Towards late afternoon, the sun begins to fall behind the walls. The shade is a little cooler, the stone a little softer. At these hours, women usually hang laundry, change the children's clothes, and prepare the remaining dough for the evening. You too hang the washed coverings on the line in the courtyard. The wind gently dries them. At that moment you feel that the wind lightens not only the cloths but also the weight on you. Even this simple act is a kind of ritual. Life flows between things that are washed and dried. The pitcher is now empty. The water you carried full this morning is now dripping onto the dusty floor. But you do not see this as emptiness, because life has continued with that water. It has not just been drunk, it has been lived. Hands have been washed, food has been made, a neighbour's problem solved, a child's lips moistened. For a while you are alone with the pitcher. You gently place it on the ground. You examine its exterior with your fingers. The clay surface has not cracked since morning. This pitcher has been used for years. Perhaps your mother's pitcher, perhaps a piece of dowry you brought when you married, perhaps an old thing given by a neighbour, but for you it is not just an object. It is the concrete form of the weight carried every morning. A pitcher without water is actually the heaviest, because there is a sty.
So much waiting in it. Then you think of the well again, the woman from this morning, the familiar but nameless face who filled her second pitcher with your help, then silently walked away. What she said is still in your mind, even though they knew they were poor. These words accumulate within you. They don't just stay in your ear, they pass into your mind. Towards evening, between every slowing movement, you repeat this sentence. Happiness, poverty, carrying water, breaking bread, taking refuge in the shade. Is there truly happiness in all of this, or just acceptance? And perhaps the deepest thought is not the question itself. It is that you are able to ask the question, because asking shows that something inside is still alive. The children ask for water again. The little one points to the pitcher with his hand. Mother, the water is gone, he says. At that moment, you cannot answer, because something else within you has not ended. But outside, the water truly is exhausted. A moment of hesitation. Should you go back to the well? The sun is about to set. The path to the well is now more desolate. But water is needed. This decision is based not only on a need, but on a habit of being a woman. To do what is expected, to act as required, to complete what is missing, you adjust your head covering, take your pitcher. You set out on the slope again. Your steps are slower this time, but more conscious. The path to the well is solitary this time. The morning's hustle is gone, but the stones are in their place. Your feet recognize them by heart again. When you reach the well, no one is there. The bucket is in place, the rope soft, the water deep. But the atmosphere is silent. You place your pitcher on the ground, lower the bucket. The creak of the rope is the first sound of the night. The sound of the wooden bucket hitting the water echoes. Even pulling up the
bucket is heavy, like a thought, because this hour is no longer just a physical time, it has become a time of introspection. As you fill your pitcher, you raise your head slightly. The sky has turned dark blue. The first stars appear. The wind is no longer cool, it is sharp. But at that moment, this coldness does not chill you. On the contrary, it envelops you. Because here at the well, you are now alone. And loneliness does not frighten you, because this loneliness is a silent conversation. Returning, the pitcher is full again, but you are lighter, because that question is no longer carried. That question has mingled with the water. Happiness, perhaps, is not in what you carry. It is hidden in where you can share it with others. In the earliest hours of the morning, when the lake is still like a mirror, the first boat pulls up to the shore. The sound of oars echoes softly on the water's surface, hits the stones on the shore, and immediately fades away. This sound is the Tiberias Lake's own clock, a cycle of time that returns before the rooster crows, begins before the sun rises, and is hoped to end before the wind picks up. You are one of the 4 people in that boat. Your hands are hardened by the ropes. The skin on your fingertips is peeling. Your palms are lined with salt. You have spent most of the night in the water, but your work is not yet finished. Because when the net is cast into the lake, the work is not just waiting. The real burden is pulling the net back. And when that moment comes, a hope mixed with patience begins. Will there be enough fish this time? Your friend, who leans the oars against the water's edge and steadies the boat, is silent. He always is. Fishermen don't talk much because throughout the night, sound echoes on the lake, scaring away the fish. But there is another, deeper reason. Everyone here knows the result but does not question the reason. Therefore, silence is maintained while pulling the net. You pull the net together. As the rope tightens, our back muscles burn, your feet tremble to stay steady in the boat. The first thing that catches your hand when you touch the net is a stone, then seaweed, then a few small silver fish, but then emptiness. Too much emptiness. This is a sight you are accustomed to. The net might be full, but fullness doesn't satisfy. It only guarantees the next day. If there are no fish, then there is no food for tomorrow, no sales in the market. And when the Roman tax collector comes saying, "This month was not fruitful," means nothing. Because for Rome, the sea is an endless treasury. It measures your obligation, not your earnings. The lake, once, was like freedom. In the stories you heard from your father and his father, the lake was bountiful. Every net pulled at dawn was a blessing. But now the lake is quieter, stingier. Perhaps only the eyes have changed, perhaps only expectations. When you pull the boat to shore, the net is still damp. The few small fish inside are gathered in a bowl. Everyone exchanges glances, neither too many nor too few. No one asks, "Is it enough?" Because the answer is obvious. But no one dares to say enough. Fishermen live not by hope, but by habit. Your feet are bare. You feel the hardness as they touch the stones. As you step on the wet sand, the coolness of the mud refreshes your skin, but chills your bones. When you straighten your back and look at the shore, morning smoke has just begun to rise. The scent of clay ovens spreads from the houses. It doesn't mix with the fish, but this smell shows that the houses are still functioning. Your house is among those smokes. Perhaps your children are still sleeping. Perhaps your wife has already poured water into the pitcher, but you still smell of salt. Fish scales on your hands, wind in your hair. You sit by the stone wall on the lake shore. The net needs washing. You squat among the stones and re-immer. So the net in the water, more for thinking than cleaning. In every knot there is the weight of a day. Which fish escaped? Through which hole did it slip? Which rope rotted? Cleaning the net is like reviewing the past, but it never makes the future certain. Other boats are nearby. Some are still on the lake, some pulled ashore, some being emptied. No one shouts, no one boasts. There is no competition among fishermen because the lake is shared, but life is carried separately on each person's back. The night spent in the water turns into a distant morning on land. Children appear on the lake shore. They approach curiously. They look at the faces of their fathers, uncles, older brothers. If there are few fish, their eyes drop to the ground. If there are many fish, They rejoice silently, but most of all they love to play with pebbles. The lake is always a game for children, but for you it is always life. Only those who play games do not wonder about the depth of the lake. A neighbor woman approaches, a small basket in her hand. She doesn't ask, "Are there a few fish today?" but asks with her eyes by looking at the basket. You put a few fish into her basket. No money is exchanged. Sometimes she gives bread, sometimes a piece of olive. Sometimes she just bows her head. The rules of bartering for fish are silent. It's necessary to return home before the sun rises too high. Fish spoils in the sun. Odor spreads, stains remain. You take the net bag in your hand and place the load on your back. Your foot strikes the stones. The way back is heavier than the way there, because now you are carrying both fish and the outcome. As you enter the house door, the children are awake. Your wife is at the clay oven. She wipes her hands and gives you a bowl of water. She doesn't ask. She just looks. She sees not how many fish there are, but how tired you are. You don't answer either. You just take a sip from the pitcher. The water is not like the lake. It is not salty, but it burns as it goes down your throat, because responsibility sometimes changes the taste even of water. You show the small fish to the children. They get excited. Their eyes sparkle. But you know this joy is short-lived, because these fish only save one meal. Tomorrow you will have to go out to the water again. The net will be cast again. Again, if the lake remains silent, your hands will return empty. Your wife takes the fish and carries them to the water to clean. You sit in a corner. You rub your hands. Scales remain under your nails. The salt burns your skin. But most of all, it burns within you, because on the lake you catch not only fish, but also hope. And hope often slips away like water. For a moment, you recall another fisherman you saw that morning. That young man, he often comes to the shore. But he doesn't fish. No net, no boat. But he talks to people, quietly. Sometimes to children, sometimes to women, sometimes to you. He once said, "The sea is full, not just of fish, but also of patience." Those words stuck in your mind that day, because your patience continues, sometimes even after returning with nothing. Whatever the lake gives you, you go out again the next day. This is not faith, not habit. This is a way of survival, and you choose it every day. As the day turns fully to noon, the shadow inside the house grows. You want to sleep a little. The fatigue from the lake doesn't pass without sleep. But before you sleep, you think once more. The lake is always the same. But am I changing a little more each day? When you return to the lake shore, the sun is no longer directly overhead. The midday heat has begun to give way to long shadows. The net you left this morning is still there, spread over a stone. Dried, but still untangled, the knots remaining within await untangling for the continuation of the day. You slowly gather the net with your hands. Every knot is like a reflection of the morning, some tight, some loose, some rotted, some come undone. As you touch them, you relive the night, that cold, that salty wind, that silence that filled your chest in the darkness. All seem to be ingrained in the strands of the net. As you untangle a knot, you remember your father, who worked on the same net years ago. He untangled it like this too, silent, patient, but with that deep weariness that never left his face. Today your face is the same lines, the same silence, but there is a difference. Then there were more fish in the lake. Another fisherman comes to your side. He greets you, sits down. You don't speak. But he too begins to untangle his net. This scene on the lake shore. Silently working hands, nets spread over stones. A faint child's voice in the distance, and an occasional drawn-out seagull cry. This is the unchanging rhythm of the Galilee shore. The longest dialogue between you is a short sentence. The lake is calm this week. This refers both to the surface of the water and to the anxiety of livelihood. You bow your head. You neither confirm nor contradict, because the lake is not to be judged. The lake rests. A little further on, someone hums a song while repairing his net. Very slow, almost mixed with breath. The words are unfamiliar, but the rhythm is calming. In this slow life on the lake shore, even music comes as a whisper. Everyone who raises their voice here is carried away by the wind. A little further, there are small stalls set up by the lake. You take the morning's fish there. Each is placed in a bowl, a small basket. Salt is sprinkled on them. Water is poured on them occasionally so they don't dry out. The old man at the stall manages the bartering. No one says a word because he sets the price. Calculations are made according to Rome's tax rates. No one knows what you earn, but it's clear who will take how much. This trade on the lakeshore proceeds. DS not with the labor of the morning, but with a silent acceptance. You deliver your fish and receive only a few copper coins. With this money, flour is bought, salt is bought, perhaps a little lentil, but most often nothing is left over. And as you return home, you think less of the sound of the coins in your pocket and more of the fact that the net is now empty. A child stops you on the way. "Was my father on the lake today?" he asks. You squint your eyes, trying to remember. There are so many faces, so much silence. It's hard to even know who was there and who wasn't. But the expectation in the child's eyes feels heavy, so you just nod your head. "Yes," you say. "He was on the lake." This is a comfort, because here, even being present gives assurance. When you arrive home, the shadows have already entered the house. Your wife has put out the tandoor. The children are playing outside. The little one has a stone in his hand. The other has a hole in his sandal. You are met with that ordinariness. There is neither reproach nor praise, only the silence of another day passing. The pitcher still stands in the corner, empty. But you don't touch it, because tomorrow morning it will be full again. Water, like fish, is carried anew every day. It diminishes every day. But it is the one thing that is never given up. You sit at the table with your family. One of today's fish has been cut into small pieces and cooked on the embers. Next to it, only bread and olives. But your eyes go to your child's hand. He swallows even the smallest piece of fish with joy. And in the day's weariness, you are left alone with the value of that small morsel. After eating, you sit outside for a while. You lean against the stone wall. The lake is invisible, but its scent reaches you. Its salt, along with the air, fills your lungs. You glance at the corner where you spread the net to dry. It sways gently with the wind. It's not completely dry yet, but it seems ready for tomorrow, because you are too neither completely rested nor completely exhausted. You are just in a state of preparation for the next day. And suddenly, that silent man who stopped by the shore this morning comes to mind, the one without a net, who didn't row a boat, but who looked at everyone's face one by one. He was there again today, but this time you saw him helping to bandage a child's knee. Without saying anything, he just bent down, bandaged it, and left. This man is like the lake itself, silent but touching. Everyone notices, but no one talks about him. Another day has passed. The fish were few, the earnings were low, but the net was still in your hand. And in this city, a fisherman with a net in his hand still carries hope. When you lie down in bed that night, the muscles in your back still ache, but your mind is silent, because what is heard not from within the lake, but from around it, is sometimes the truest answer. As your eyes close, this sentence passes through your mind. Even when the lake remains silent, do I listen to it? As night falls, the villages along the Sea of Galilee are completely enveloped in silence. The stone walls of the houses, as if having absorbed the dust and sun of the day, still radiate warmth, while life inside becomes heavy, like the lake. Everyone accepts that another day has ended. Lights are dim, lamps burn with little oil. Conversations turn to whispers. No one shouts, no one tells stories, because here stories are conveyed not with sound, but with time. You are sitting on the stone threshold of your own house. Beside you is your son, who went out to the lake with you today. He is not yet considered a full fisherman. He slowly unties the knots in the nets, still the child who hides his hand when a splinter gets in. But in today's silence he seems to have grown another step, because for the first time he felt the emptiness that came from the net. With you! For the first time he understood the silence of the lake, the meaning of weariness, the weight of the single copper coin left in his pocket when returning home. You don't speak, because you don't want to tell. You want him to learn. Like every fisherman's son, you want him to grow up carrying his own weight. The only thing you offer him in this silence is a half-finished net. Finish it, you say with your eyes. We will use it tomorrow. And he bends down, untangling the remaining knots. A distant rooster crows, followed by a dog's bark. Even the sounds of the night here are more thoughtful. The lake is no longer visible, but its presence continues. Because salt is still between your nails, the wind is still in your hair. Perhaps you caught few fish today, but the lake gave you something again, if not a livelihood, then patience. As you return to your house, you glance at the old nets hanging on the wall. These are from your father. They are no longer used, their ropes rotted, their rings rusted, but you don't throw them away, because every fisherman's past, even as it rots on the wall, teaches something, perhaps knotting technique, perhaps when not to give up. At night, you stay awake for a while. You watch a spider web hanging from the ceiling, a tiny thing, but it moves with the wind. Even it has its order. Like you, it spins life from threads. The difference is that your net is set in water, it's in air. But both of you have the same concern: waiting. At that moment, you remember again that foreign man you saw on the shore this morning. He came silently, exchanged nothing with anyone, but bandaged a child's wound. That man does not belong to this village, but he did not disrupt its rhythm. On the contrary, he joined it. And this thought resonates within you. Does the lake perhaps attract these kinds of people? The silent, the overlooked, but also the healers. You feel a strange sense of trust in the presence of this man you don't even know. because that day the lake gave little, but someone offered kindness without asking for anything in return. And this is a rare thing in history. Usually people catch fish to sell. But this man used his hands not to net, but to bandage wounds. Morning comes. When you open your eyes, the sun has not risen, but the roosters have started crowing. You get up, but your body has woken before you. Your feet carry you to the water pitcher. Your hands carry the water once again. Life seems to consist of repetitions. But you know that every repetition is a slight shift of something within you. Your son is also up. He checks the nets. He acts before you do. Because now this lake is not just your concern, but his too. Perhaps one day his back will bend like yours, his hands will crack. But he too will leave the same silent legacy to his son. In this land, dominated by water, net, stone, salt and silence, fishermen carry not just a livelihood, but a memory shaped by time. And you, in the new day, just beginning this morning, walk towards the lake, thinking, perhaps in this silence, the most enduring thing is not just the fish, but humanity itself. Before the first light of morning has reached the stone-walled streets, shadows appear longer than anything else. You are walking on one of the hilly streets. The stones under your feet are damp. The night's dew has not yet receded. To your left is the stone chimney of a small bakery. No smoke rises yet, but the crackling of wood inside can be heard. The day has not yet begun. But you are already awake, because mornings start early in this town, especially if you live under Rome's shadow. Today, you need to go to the tax collection point in the city centre for the registration and delivery of produce from the fields. But the unease within you is not just about these procedures, because Rome here not only collects taxes, it also weighs every step, counts every stone, listens to every silence. As you walk, a two-person group approaches from the opposite direction. The one walking in front is a Roman soldier. His armour has begun to reflect the morning sun, a short spear on his shoulder, a gladius at his waist. There is neither anger nor mercy on his face. His gaze is like a wall, cold, plain, and impenetrable. Beside him is a Jewish scribe. He carries a wax tablet in his hand, occasionally wetting his stylus. He accompanies the soldier, because Rome had learned to use local hands to write its own language. As they approach you, you slow your walk. You avert your eyes, because looking directly can be dangerous, not courageous. In these lands, silence is the greatest defense. The soldier passes without looking at you, but he leaves something behind, like the movement of a pebble underfoot, a tiny tremor, invisible but felt. This is Rome's true power, its ability to shape you from beginning to end without having to show its presence. As you continue to walk, this thought crosses your mind. When did they come here? When do they plan to leave? And since when have we only asked these questions to ourselves? These lands once saw other kingdoms, other invaders, but Rome's occupation was different, because it came not only with weapons, but with stone, mortar, writing, and silence. It drew its borders not with walls, but with laws. And you no longer even remember when those laws began, because that was a time before you were born. But now, even as you breathe, you carry Rome's mark. When you reach the end of the street, you see a column on the right, Latin inscriptions on it. No one fully understands them, but everyone knows what they mean. There is an order here, and this order belongs to Rome. You saw this inscription as a child too, but now that stone feels heavier to you, because as yea,
Ars papas. It's not the stones, but the meanings that harden.
it is rumoured that there will be a small ceremony in town today, a centurion's passage, or perhaps a greeting ceremony for a newly appointed governor. But for you, this is just another silent alarm, because every ceremony is a reminder, reminding you who you are not, where you are deemed to belong. An old man sits by the roadside, in his hand an old scroll, not parchment, but written on felt. He murmurs, perhaps a psalm, or the words of ancient prophets, but his voice is barely heard. Because in this era, even sacred words are conveyed in whispers. Loud faith breeds doubt. Silence preserves one's faith. And this thought confronts you with another truth. Perhaps the greatest test of this era is not to speak words, but to remain silent. Rome's shadow has fallen not only on the streets, but also on souls. People have become careful even in their dreams. As you approach the tax collection point, you see those waiting in line. Everyone is silent. No one looks at each other. They are only focused on the goods in their hands, their bags, their scales. Because here, even eye contact can lead to an extra question. When you enter, you are again met by a Jewish official. But the Roman scribe sits in the back room. He records the parchments, stamps are affixed. Everyone must be a part of this order, because to be outside means to be alone. And in this era, loneliness is the heaviest punishment. When your business is done, you step outside. The sun has risen a little higher. The columns, whose shadows are now shorter, show the reality of the day more clearly. And you, trying to forget the process you just went through, return to the same stone streets. But that shadow, the shadow where the Roman soldier walked, it continues to walk with you. Because Rome has occupied these lands not only with its footsteps, but with its silence. And you begin to ask, when a people become accustomed to their occupiers, how is freedom remembered? But to realize that this shadow is not only on you, but also on that soldier, you must try to look from his side. Now, one of the same stone streets. But this time we look through the eyes of a man walking in armor. His name is Marcus. He is a Roman legionary. He has been a soldier for over 10 years. He has been assigned from Syria to Palestine. He is under the direct command, not of the emperor, but of the local governor. But his steps are still like law. And this morning his duty is to patrol towards Bethlehem. Marcus's feet are accustomed to the hard stones. His armor is cold in the morning chill, but he is used to this numbness. As he walks, the people do not look at him, or they pretend not to look. This silent non-gazing, woven with silence, had bothered him at first. Now this silence is an affirmation of his presence for him, not a wordless respect, but a wordless acceptance. But deep down, Marcus also questions, why are there so many gods in these lands, and why so much silence? In Rome, the squares are crowded. Here, people keep their distance. Languages are different, but the main difference is in the structure of silence. Marcus gives orders in Latin, but those facing him either don't understand or, understanding, bow their heads anyway, because here, this language is only a carrier of fear. As Marcus passes in front of a bakery, he feels the warmth coming from inside, but he does not enter, because although it is not forbidden for soldiers to be familiar with the people, it is not looked upon favorably, especially in these lands. Here, a soldier is not a body, he is a sign. A symbol of power is carried on him, That symbol weighs heavier than the man himself. At the corner of the hilly street, he makes eye contact with a small child. The child takes a few steps back, immediately hiding behind his mother's skirt. The woman quickly bows her head. She does not greet Marcus, but she does not ignore him either. This is a balance he has learned here, to be neither too close nor too far. Marcus continues to walk. Everyone he sees in these streets seems to have memorized their role in a play. Everyone knows what to do, what not to say, and Marcus feels like just an extra, walking onto the stage in this play, because his duty is no longer to fight, it is to ensure silence. As he approaches the marketplace, whispers rise from within. The languages are unfamiliar, but the tones are familiar: bargaining, objection, offer. But all at a suppressed level, as if these lands are closed to noise. Yet Marcus had grown up with the sounds of shouting vendors in the neighborhood where he grew up in Rome. The silence here now seems more real to him. He realizes he has forgotten how to live in noise. According to the order he received from his captain, he must be around the temple at noon, especially to maintain order among the crowds of Jewish pilgrims. But Marcus experiences a strange feeling as he approaches the temple. He feels that the stones there are watching him, as if the gigantic stone blocks which have stood there for centuries saw those who came like him, remembered, and sighed silently. The difficulty of being a soldier is sometimes not being able to recognize the enemy. Here the enemy does not show its face, because the people have forgotten how to revolt, or they have disguised their revolts as prayers. When Marcus senses this, he realizes that the patience underlying such a great silence can actually be dangerous. But he cannot tell this to his superiors, because for Rome, silence is proof of victory. At noon, he is at his post. He sits on the stone steps around the temple, taking refuge in the shade. He watches the people passing below. Some never raise their heads, others glance at him. But all know of his presence, because even a shadow carries the light of the sun, and he is the Roman shadow in these lands. As a group of pilgrims moves towards the temple, an old man among them catches his attention. He walks leaning on his staff. His lips move, but there is no sound. Perhaps a prayer, perhaps an ancient hymn. Marcus remembers his own father as he looks at him. He too, when old, would sit in front of their house in Rome and speak in whispers, but his whispers came from old age, not fear of the state. Whereas here silence begins, not with age, but with order. At the end of the day, he completes his duty. He relays his report to the scribe. He states that there were no incidents today. Everything was calm, he says. But there is a stirring within him, because somewhere in such a silent land, a scream might be hidden. As Marcus returns to his barracks, the same question circles in his head. Is silence truly a sign of peace, or the echo of a suppressed memory? As the shadows begin to lengthen, Marcus sits silently at the base of the wall. He feels the weight of the dust that has clung to him throughout the day, the metallic smell mingled with sweat inside his armor, the sound of his footsteps striking the stones, but most of all, the silence that never leaves him. Every day spent in Jerusalem adds another stone to his back, and every stone means speaking less. From where he sits, he watches an old wall. No one passes by there. It's one of the back streets remaining in shadow. Part of the wall is cracked. The stones have shifted, but are still standing, just like this city. Silent from the outside, fragmented from within, but not fallen. Marcus's last day of duty keeps replaying in his mind. A moment he experienced around the temple will not leave his heart. An old man's hands trembled as he tried to pick up a stone tablet he had dropped on the ground. Marcus approached him but did not offer his hand. He merely watched. As the man got up, he looked at Marcus and walked away without saying anything in Latin. At that moment, not guilt, but an undefinable emptiness arose within Marcus, as if someone had passed by him, as if erasing his existence. For the first time, he felt invisible. Yet his job was to be visible. When he returns to the barracks, the commander's voice echoes, "Was everything all right today?" Yes, everything was all right. Silence prevailed. But over what exactly? As Marcus lies on his bed, he cannot close his eyes. He hears distant footsteps from outside, the neighing of a distant animal, and that undefined hum coming from the depths of the city. Jerusalem is a city that speaks even in the silence of the night, but this speaking happens not with sound, but with remembrance. That night, he has a dream. He finds himself sitting alone in a room built of stones. There is neither a door nor a window in the wall. Only stone and shadow. His armor is on, but it is heavy. He cannot stand. He wants to speak, but has no tongue. He only looks at the walls with his eyes. Every wall looks back at him like a face. And then one of the walls cracks. Neither blood flows from it, nor light filters through. Only a breath emerges. A short, cold breath. Marcus wakes up. He is breathless. It is still night outside. He gets up and looks out the window. The sky is clear. The stars twinkle silently. Even the stars in these lands twinkle with a whisper, because even the night cannot speak loudly here. When he goes on patrol the next day, he feels that something has changed, as if there is another gaze within his eyes, another story beneath the streets, and he is outside this story. He is merely an observer. He no longer just maintains order. He also tries to maintain his own place, because he realizes that occupation is not silently seizing a people, but a soul. One day, while on duty around church, he sees a group of children playing. One of the children accidentally runs close to him, and their eyes meet. Marcus bends down and offers the child a stone. He has carved a Latin letter onto the stone. The child is surprised, but not afraid. He takes the stone and runs off. This tiny contact creates a tremor within Marcus. Perhaps for the first time he has offered a hand to someone in these lands, not as a threat, but as a human being. However, military life leaves no room for such moments. Reports are written, diaries are completed, the order of the unit is not disturbed. But the inner order of a person cracks a little more each day. Marcus now sleeps later at night. He walks more, and he speaks less. One day, speaking with another soldier, he asks, "What are we really protecting here, peace or fear?" The other soldier does not answer. He merely shrugs his shoulders. Perhaps he doesn't know either. Perhaps he doesn't want to know. Marcus eventually realizes that everything here has two voices, an outer voice and an inner voice. The outer voice is Rome's voice, command, rule, discipline. The inner voice is the memory carried by these stones, these streets, these people. And the inner voice is louder in silence, sharper, more stubborn. As months pass, Marcus's presence becomes commonplace for the people. Children no longer run from him. Women pass without bowing their heads, or at least they make not looking at him natural. But this very commonplaceness is proof that something is changing, because when silence turns into habit, it becomes the shadow itself. One morning, Marcus receives his discharge papers. He needs to prepare to return to Rome. For the first time in years, he will return to his homeland. But he cannot sleep that night. The idea of returning to his own country frightens him, because Rome now seems too noisy to him. Leaving this silo,
It is like a wall crumbling. Jerusalem's shadow had felt heavy to him, but now it has become a part of him.
he gets up and goes to the wall. He places his hand on one of the stones. That stone was laid years ago by a Jewish mason, perhaps with prayer, perhaps with tears. Now, a Roman soldier whispers his farewell to that stone. Here I learned silence. And now I know the strongest command is not a sound, but memory. When the morning sun hits the stone walls of Jerusalem, it first warms the marketplace. The dampness accumulated under the stalls throughout the cool night now slowly begins to evaporate with the sun. The crowd has not yet formed, but footsteps have already begun to echo on the stones. These are the early arrivals: farmers, fishermen, date and olive merchants. You are among this crowd too, but you are not just any buyer. Today, you are merely observing. You walk slowly, without touching the stalls, just looking as you go. Because you have come here not to buy something, but to understand something. The Jerusalem market tells its story not with its noise, but with its rhythm. Every morning, the same vendors in the same places, but every day, different words, different eyes, the same words passing through different mouths. The price of a basket carries not only monetary value, it is also a measure of the fear, hopes, and expectations there. The first stall you stop at belongs to a fisherman. The fish, having arrived early this morning from the Sea of Galilee, still shine as if alive, but you notice that the weariness on the fisherman's face is not ordinary. A brief prayer on his lips, anxiety in his eyes. The fish are cheaper than usual. This is a sign that something has gone wrong on the lake. Perhaps the tax collectors demanded more. Perhaps soldiers confiscated his nets this morning. Or perhaps weather conditions changed the entire catch. But he says none of this. He just continues to sell silently. A little further on is a date stall. An old woman, Metai, curiously displays dates strung like prayer beads. She has placed a thin cloth under each date. They look as if they grew among the sand, but were prepared by a mother's hand. The woman looks at each customer as if to say, "These are sacred fruits." And she whispers silently, "The dried ones are more durable if you are going far." These words stop you. Far away? What did the woman mean? Perhaps she mistook you for a traveller. Or perhaps everyone in this city now has a possibility of leaving. The taste of a farewell seems to have permeated the dates. A little further still, you witness an argument between two olive sellers. Their argument is silent. It is not verbal, but it continues with glances, price signs, and gestures towards customers. Both may be bringing olives from the same village. But one sells them a denarius cheaper than the other. This is not just competition, this is also a sign of who has suffered more, who has lost more. Because sometimes the price shows not only economics, but also whose family has a missing plate at the table. The crowd slowly grows. Men ask prices, women touch, children run. But on some faces, there is something else. Hesitation. Especially at some stalls, people stop and just look, not speaking. Especially at a few points where Roman goods are sold. There the silence is loud. Because items from Rome, gold-embroidered belts, red-dyed fabrics, are not just wealth. They are also the colour of oppression. In the eyes, looking at those products, there is admiration, anger and desperation, and no one says too expensive aloud, because here prices measured not only by money, but by fear. Further on, you see a man squatting on the ground with two bowls in front of him, one full of wheat, the other empty. He bows his head, murmuring as if in prayer. He is not selling anything, not asking for anything, but people passing by him bow their heads slightly, because they know him. He was an old teacher. He used to live in a house near the temple, but one day something happened. No one knows exactly what. Only that one morning his house door was sealed, and the man has not spoken since. Now he just sits here, looking at the bowls, and people silently leave grains of wheat, as if that empty bowl is the answer to all of Jerusalem's unknown questions. Towards noon, the sounds in the market increase, but the meaning decreases. Whispers multiply. Especially a few men gathered behind a stall catch your attention. They speak with hand gestures. A piece of paper is shown. It might have a name or a symbol on it. It is quickly folded and hidden. One man makes a sign towards the sky. The other nods his head. This is not an ordinary transaction. This is something else. Perhaps the beginning of things Rome does not want to see. Another striking feature in the market is the absence of soldiers. Normally, a few Roman soldiers patrol the market, but they are absent today. This absence does not bring peace. On the contrary, it causes everyone to lower their voices even more. Because people fear when they see soldiers, but they fear even more when they don't see soldiers. Silence here is always a harbinger of danger. In a corner, a small child sells figs in a basket. No one is with him, dust on his face, torn sandals on his feet, but his voice is loud. Sweet figs, freshly picked. The woman who approaches him doesn't bargain. She just asks the price and buys them. Because one does not bargain with a child. His voice is like the most real voice of the market. Neither a whisper nor silence. Just a call spoken to live. A little further, an old bookbinder has set up a small table. On it are a few parchments, 2 ink pots, and a broken pen. Passers-by are not interested, because writing here is only the business of religious scholars. But the man with the lines on his face scrutinizes everyone who passes, as if each one is a word. For him, the market is a text, every customer is a sentence, and he reads each day silently. As the day progresses, the air grows hotter. People seek shade, thin cloths are stretched over the stalls, some vendors fan themselves with leaves, but you realize that the sweat is not just from the heat. This sweat is the sweat of waiting. Everyone in the market tries to sell something, but everyone also tries to avoid something. It is clear that unspoken things are the most expensive commodity in the market. Most of what happens in the market today might seem ordinary to you, but in fact, ordinariness here carries the deepest meanings, because in these lands, daily life is lived in the shadow of a wall, and every shadow carries an invisible burden. As you reach the market exit, an old woman with a head covering approaches you. There are traces of salt at the corners of her eyes. "You are very quiet today," she says. You don't ask how she knew, you just smile. Because in this city, people hear silence. And then you realize that this market is not just a market of prices. This market is a market of whispers, glances, and unspeakable things. But most of all, it is a market of patience. In the first part, you observed the silent chaos of the Jerusalem market in the morning hours, the fears hidden behind prices, and what people said by remaining silent. But as the sun reached its peak, shadows replaced silence. The rhythm of the market changed, and you were no longer just an observer, but almost a part of that rhythm. At midday, shadows sharpen in the marketplace. As the sun heats the stone ground, people's faces wrinkle, sweat, mingling with their brow lines. But you notice that these wrinkles are not just from the sun, but traces of years and lived experiences. Every face seems to hide another story. You stop in front of a potter's stall. On his stall are large jars, water pitchers, olive oil, amphorae. But what catches your attention is not the products displayed, but the potter's hands. His fingers are calloused, clay-dried and cracked at the edges of his nails, but most striking is an old scar on his thumb. It's bent slightly to the left, as if its shape was altered by a blow. Seeing that you notice this, the man looks at you and nods slightly. Without saying anything, he turns his eyes back to his stall. But that injured thumb makes you think. To work in this city means not just labor, but to participate in memory with one's body. Every hand carries the silent history of these lands. You approach a small fountain in the middle of the market. Children wait in line to drink water. Some wash their hands, while others just wet their palms and rub them on their faces. Water is sacred here. It exists not only to quench thirst, but also for a kind of purification. Because in these lands, sin is not only contracted through words or actions, but sometimes through thought, and people sometimes wash their faces only with their thoughts. Near the fountain, a young man sells dates. But instead of arranging the dates on a stall, he takes them one by one from his basket and offers them to passers-by. With each date he gives, he moves his mouth as if murmuring a brief prayer. Some think he is mad, others whisper that he is a seeker, that is, someone trying to establish an invisible connection between God and people. Such individuals are rare, and they usually either remain very lonely or attract a lot of attention. But this man seems to experience both. No one approaches him, yet everyone watches him from afar. As your eyes slowly wander around, a stall clearly belonging to Rome catches your attention. Bright fabrics, gilded jewelry, small medallions. But the seller is not Jewish. He is a young man of Syrian origin. He wears a red belt imprinted with a Roman legionary sign. This belt symbolizes his immunity. No one can raise their voice against him. But no one buys from him either. Passers-by merely look and move on. This silent protest is like an inner resistance carried by the city, an unarmed but unyielding defiance. In the middle of the day, the conversation of a group of women who have come to the market is singled out from the crowd. They have baskets in their hands, worn coverings beneath their hair. But their conversation is striking. They start with the price of olive oil, then speak of a newborn baby. After a while, the conversation turns to a sermon given last week by a rabbi in the temple. One of the women talks about the phrase inner purity from the sermon. How will we achieve inner purity? She asks aloud. The others fall silent. This seems like a simple question, but you realize that the echo of that question drowns out the other sounds in the market, because in this city, not only the answer to questions but also the way they are asked is important. A group of men is gathered under a tree in the market. They sit, eating lunch with pieces of bread in their hands. Their conversation is low-voiced but rhythmic. If you listen, you understand that they are not just talking about bread, but current events, taxes, road checkpoints, Rome's latest decisions. One mentions a name, Joseph. The other replies, "From Nazareth." And then all three fall silent. At that moment, the sound in the air seems to stop. Because here, some names represent not just a person, but a movement, a threat, or a hope. Everyone knows, but no one says it aloud. At the edge of the marketplace, a small itinerant scribe catches the eye. He writes short notes on parchment, and some people have old prayers copied. You approach him. The scribe's hands are fast but steady. You ask, "What is being written most these days?" The man replies, "Old prayer texts."
"I'll send some letters, but most are kept without being sent." "Why?" you ask.
He looks into your eyes and says, silently, "Because some things must wait to be said." This answer seems to summarize the general atmosphere of the market. People here come not just to buy or sell, but also to keep what they have lived. Every basket, a memory, every stall, a waiting, every vendor stands guard before an invisible wall. As the day slowly begins to call for evening, shadows lengthen into the market, the wind cools, but this coolness does not bring relief. On the contrary, it hastens people, because night here brings more than questions, and with night people retreat not only into their homes but also into themselves. As you walk towards the market exit, a child approaches you. He holds a piece of wood. He has drawn something on it with charcoal. He hands it to you and says, "This is yours." You don't understand. But you look. There is a drawing of a bird on the wood. But it has no wings. It only has eyes, deep, black dots. "It doesn't fly," you say. "No," says the child. "It sees." This single word makes a deeper impression on your mind than all the words you heard in the market. Because in this city, not everyone can fly, but everyone sees things, and they cannot say what they see. As the day begins to withdraw from above the Jerusalem market, the colors change. The stone walls resemble shadows. People are still there, but their voices diminish. In the market there is no longer buying and selling, but packing up. Baskets are empty, fingers are tired, but eyes still scan the surroundings, because here, even when the day ends, vigilance never ceases. As you walk through the market, this time you feel something different. The morning's liveliness, the midday's tension have now given way to a strange acceptance. As if everyone has completed their role for the day, an unexpected scene has closed, and you, without realizing it, have become not a spectator, but a part of this scene. Passing in front of a baker's shop, the mouth of the oven is still hot. The scent of bread emanating from inside permeates the stone streets, but those who come to buy bread at this hour are different. More than daily necessity, they come, perhaps, not for dinner, but to share loneliness, a widow, an old man on her arm, a silenced child. Each tries to return, not to a home, but perhaps to peace with a piece of bread. Because here, bread is not just sustenance, but a silent comfort. The gazes of the vendors packing up their stalls now wander into emptiness. The thought of profit belongs to the early hours of the day. In the evening, only thought itself remains. Prices are forgotten, only whispers remain. And these whispers sometimes turn into a name. Jesus. You hear this name whispered by a woman behind a wall, unseen by anyone, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a fear, perhaps a hope. But the echo of this name, though not spoken aloud by a single mouth in the market, silently takes its place in many thoughts. Because in this era, some names are heard even without being spoken, and some thoughts are felt even without being expressed. You continue to walk. The stones beneath your shoes have been worn by hundreds of feet throughout the day. Each carries a different story. A merchant's anxiety, a mother's prayer, a young person's indecision. But the stone remains silent. It sees everything, but tells nothing. Just like this city. Just like you. In a corner, an old man sits alone, holding an old violin case on his knees. He doesn't take out the violin. He doesn't play it. He just caresses the case. His eyes are closed, his head slightly bowed. Children passing by think he is mad. But you realize that this man was perhaps once the voice of this city. Perhaps a wedding was celebrated with that violin. Perhaps a death was mourned. Perhaps just an afternoon's peace was found with that sound. But now even silence feels too much. You raise your eyes. The sky is like a crimson and purple curtain. Stars are not yet visible, but you know they are there, just like the unseen hopes in this city. They are invisible but felt. And that feeling sometimes makes one take a step. Sometimes it makes one utter a sentence. Sometimes it just silences you. When you reach the end of the market, you notice that the old woman you saw at the entrance this morning is still there. She has placed the last few remaining fruits on a cloth, but no longer to sell. To wait, perhaps for a customer, perhaps for a friend, perhaps for someone other than herself. You do not approach her. You only look. And she looks at you. Your eyes meet. In that moment, no words are needed, because in this city, some glances are stronger than speech. Just then, a light breeze blows. The woman's covering shifts slightly from her head. A lock of her hair becomes visible, grey, thin, and trembling. But at that moment, you feel how strong she is. Perhaps that strength is what holds this city together. Not from fear, oppression, or hunger, but from sheer endurance, a silent, ordinary, but stubborn endurance. You take a step to turn back, but the market you leave behind is no longer the morning market, the same stones, the same stalls, the same people, but each seems to have taken on a different shape. And you are no longer the same person either, because this market is not just about commerce, it is about realization. The heavy thoughts carried by tired bodies, the never-spoken sentences, the fears that could not even turn into whispers, all have passed to you. And now night falls, the market closes, but a question walks with you. This silence, is it truly a sign of peace, or the suppressed form of the loudest cry?